For those of you that are here, we're going to wait a couple minutes just to make sure that everyone is in. So we'll start in a couple minutes. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, hello everyone. My name is Jordan Rossi. I am a career counselor at Texas Career Engagement. So today we're going to talk about managing stress in the job and internship search. And I just want to make a note, if you'd like closed captioning, it is available by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. But I want to start off by saying we're going to get to questions and answers, so feel free to ask along the way. It's quite possible we'll answer your questions throughout naturally by going through the webinar, but again, I want this to be sort of conversational, so feel free to ask any questions at any time. So the first thing I want to do, I want to take a poll. Just got 2 polls today. So the first one, I wanted to go ahead and, let's see. All right, so let's see. All right, so I want to go ahead and have everyone take this poll. Definitely new to Zoom, so if this isn't something you're seeing on your end, let me know. Okay, there we go. So the question I'm asking is, which are you currently seeking, right? So internship, job, both an internship and a job, or neither. Maybe you're beginning the process. So I'm kind of curious about where everyone's at. All right, so it looks like a pretty even spread. Looks like everyone's kind of looking for an internship and or a job or just starting that process. So um, yeah, so it looks like you came to the right place. Um, all right, so let's get back to the presentation. So all right, so back to managing stress and in the job and internship search. So obviously this is a very unique time. Um, not something that we've kind of seen since the recession in '08. So the idea of looking for jobs and internships can be quite stressful in this time period because it's just so much uncertainty. So some of the goals we're kind of looking at today, I want to make sure that we better understand stress in the job and internship search. Again, very unique, uncharacteristic time. So understandably, there is a lot of stress being experienced by so many students and people. I also want to identify ways to better approach stressful scenarios, and we'll kind of walk through a couple of those. But I want to emphasize that this is sort of starting that conversation. So really trying to think about how to approach these stressful situations and build resilience to better manage, future situations or current situations you're kind of enduring or experiencing. All right, so let's start with the obvious question. Why find an internship or a job? So I'm sure for a lot of you, money, right? You want to support yourself, your family, um, again, just support in some capacity. For others, it may be trying out a career idea. Maybe this is a little bit more on the internship side, but it could apply to both, right? So it could be this is the first time you're getting that work experience. Now, for a lot of people, you're thinking, I wanted to experience that professional work environment. Obviously, that looks a little different right now with virtual work, but this is still something that can be sought out and acquired, especially if you're seeking out maybe a mentorship or supervision experience, whether that be working under someone and whether that's intentional or not. So maybe someone that has that experience with working in that professional work environment, depending on the industry or job setting. So that can be really beneficial to give you an idea. Okay, you're thinking, do I like this or not? So that could be a good starting point. Another reason is networking. We'll kind of dive more deeper into this, but networking is quite significant during this time period. But you never know what kind of doors are going to open up due to networking, right? You never know what you're going to learn by someone else that's been in the industry or a certain job setting. So networking is really important. And these last three, they're kind of lumped together, right? So becoming more marketable, you're gaining that transferable skill set, building your resume. So for those of you that don't know, the transferable skills are essentially skills that you're acquiring within some sort of experiential opportunity that this skill set can be applied to a future opportunity. So even if you think, I'm seeking out this job or internship and I'm really sure that it aligns with what I'm looking for, you are probably or most likely gaining a transferable skill set that will be quite valuable for you. So keeping that in mind, especially during a time where you're thinking, I may not get the internship or job that I'm really wanting. This is a good reframe. And this is the word we're going to kind of return to a lot, is a reframe. But moving right along, how have these opportunities changed? I'm sure this is something you've noticed. This is kind of something we're noticing from other students via the news, employers. So clearly there's a lot of virtual work going on. There's no or less traveling. So much less traveling. That's just something that's, clearly kind of unsafe at the moment. And a lot of businesses are realizing that virtual work can be done and that it is possibly cheaper, perhaps. And this may be the norm for the foreseeable future, depending on the business setting and the industry, right? So we talked about networking a little bit prior to this. Networking is so significant right now because thinking about everyone doing virtual work remotely, they're more readily available. So networking is so much more significant now because people could respond, more likely to respond, right? So the email, via calling, perhaps you're reaching out via, social media platform like LinkedIn that's for professionals. Just think about the weight that networking can hold right now. and what kind of opportunities that could yield, perhaps. And the idea that it's more competitive. So there's kind of two sides to this right now. So it is an employer's market, and they kind of have the power right now due to so many layoffs and so many people seeking jobs. The unemployment rate has dipped to 13%, still kind of high. But when thinking about how competitive it can be, thinking in terms of, again, two different ways. One way is that the people that have been laid off that are very experienced, obviously they're going to be pretty competitive when looking for jobs or internships. Having said that, they may be costly to employers. So the way to kind of reframe that and look at this is that people coming out of college, whether it be for an internship or a job, they may be less costly for employers. So that might be more appealing. So don't think that all the doors are closed just because other people that are more experienced may be more in line to get a job. So there are pros and cons to both. And then there's clearly an industry shift. Just to name a couple examples, there's a shift towards logistics, definitely healthcare, and then people offering the tools and services for those working remotely. So kind of keeping all these in mind and knowing that this could all change, right? Clearly, we don't really know how the economy is going to respond in the next year or so or longer. So just knowing that maintaining adaptability and flexibility is something that will be kind of built in with resiliency. And we'll talk about that. All right, so I wanted to launch one last poll. Bear with me, this is clearly Zoom is not my strength as of yet. All right. So for the second poll, there we go. So I'm curious, what's your level of stress around finding a job or internship? Is there no stress, mild stress, moderate stress, or is it a pretty high level of stress at the moment? I'll give a little more time to answering this. Okay, so as you can see, let's see, I'll have to share these. So as you all can see that most people are experiencing a pretty high level of stress, and this is understandable, right? So for right now, you're probably thinking, this was my option to make money. This is my option to try out careers or to start my career, and that's clearly changed, right? So let's kind of dive into what it looks like, what stress looks like, right? And I'm sure all of you are thinking, I know exactly what that looks like, but it's good to call it out, especially when we're thinking about how different it looks for everyone, right? So each individual can have certain stress signals that present a little differently. So there are 4 stress signals. The first 2 we're going to look at are feelings and thoughts. So the first one, feelings, you may be anxious, right? So you're thinking, I had a job, I had an internship lined up, that's now gone. It may lead to irritability, fear. So on this right side under thoughts, the last one's fear of failure. So fear is a real thing, right? Sort of feeling maybe embarrassed as well. So all of this fear of failure, feeling embarrassed, a lot of that's happening where people are thinking, I'm noticing other friends, other students have internships or jobs lined up and I lost mine or I don't have one. So it's quite normal to experience that, and sort of offer yourself some self-compassion is key. But moving along to thoughts, this can look like being really self-critical. Again, the idea of failure, like it's my fault, I should have chosen a different one, or maybe I'm not as marketable as I wanted to be. I should have taken that certain class or should have changed my major. So being self-critical, it's easy to go down that path and kind of swim in that area. And for some, that can impact their decision and concentration. So obviously, this is something that's going to be not so beneficial when looking for jobs or being able to really market yourself. So kind of we'll get to resiliency in a second, but this is something to kind of take note of. This is something you're experiencing. That's a stress signal, right? Forgetfulness, I'm thinking about so many students that are, possibly have been studying and they're so stressed about a test. Perhaps they read a whole paragraph or pages and they're like, I have no idea what I just read. So obviously that's a sign of stress. Preoccupation, that's a pretty common one. So constant worry, you're always preoccupied with the idea of, do I have a job? Do I have an internship? What does it look like if I don't have one? How long will this internship be? Just that idea of so much uncertainty naturally is going to keep some people pretty preoccupied, right? And so moving along, so the last two, there's behaviors and the physical aspect of stress. Again, I want to emphasize the idea that this looks different for everyone. So under behaviors, there could be a change in appetite. So for some people, maybe eating 3 meals a day down to 1, or maybe 3 meals a day to more than that. And that's really about the idea of possibly self-soothing or self-regulation. But at surface level, just noticing yourself and how your appetite's kind of changing is important. For some people, it was crying, and it's just different for everyone, right? Some people it just presents a little differently. Maybe that's like making impulsive decisions. Other people may be using alcohol or drugs. Obviously, that's sort of like a temporary alleviation of stress, but not long-term solution, right? And we'll get to resources about if that is something that needs to be addressed. Another behavior, and this can lead into the physical aspect, is teeth grinding or jaw clenching, right? So if you're noticing you wake up and you're thinking, oh, my jaw is kind of sore, that could be an indication of stress, right? And as far as the physical side, thinking about tight muscles, if you're just sitting there and you're thinking, my stomach muscles are tight, or I'm having balled fists, that can clearly be a sign of stress. But again, it presents differently with everyone. Sleep disturbances. So if you're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, that can lead to the idea of maybe you're preoccupied. And then for others, there could be headaches or fatigue. In severe cases, it could also lead to immune suppression. So, if you're very stressed out, it could lower your immune system and you're more likely to get sick. And again, we'll turn to resources later on about how to possibly address that if that's the case. All right, so I wanted to kind of turn to growth and fixed mindset. So kind of pivoting towards this building resiliency. I'm sure some of you have heard of growth and fixed mindset. But the way I like to think about the two of these is one is more open, one is a little bit more closed off. So in fixed mindset, there's this absolutist thought process, right? So the idea that I'm either good at it or not. That's a perfect quote for that. So you're thinking that if I'm not good at this, then I'm just not going to try it anymore. So in terms of thinking about applying for a job or an internship, just because you think that you don't have the skill set or the ability doesn't mean you shouldn't seek it out, because oftentimes we talk to students and we think about, I took this job or internship, I had no interest in it, but I was just kind of curious, and they discovered they really enjoyed it. I know that's quite general, but having this fixed mindset will really close a lot of doors. So the idea of reframing, opportunities, situations such as COVID, right? So thinking about the idea that this is a pretty challenging time, right? So when you think about a growth mindset, think about how these challenges can help you grow. And that may look like exploring other options, getting certifications in something else, taking more classes, networking. So it looks like a lot of different things, but the idea here really is to be a little more open to change and reframing situations at hand, right? So that top one is great as well. Top quote, failure is an opportunity to grow. Obviously that's associated with growth mindset, right? So just thinking about reframing these failures or opportunities that are negatives into something more positive. And the last thing I'll note about fixed mindset is it's pretty easy to kind of fall into that when stressed, because there's just this, it could be overwhelming for some, right? And to kind of sit in that negativity, it can just be comfortable for some. And to make that transition is to really kind of challenge that fixed mindset with more growth mindset ideas. All right, so let's talk about resilience and what that kind of looks like. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of what resilience is, but essentially it's the ability to recover from stress despite challenging life events. So that could be right now, right? That could be experiencing COVID. Um, Maybe that could look like in the past, say you've taken a test and you didn't do as well. And the second half of this definition is where this kind of comes in. So, experiencing these challenging life events that it would otherwise overwhelm a person's normal ability to cope with that stress. So, really thinking about how one is responding or rebounding, that's what makes a person resilient. So, if you're able to reframe, um, look at it in that growth mindset, that's going to be how you build some resiliency moving forward. All right, so how do we build resiliency, right? So this is going to be more in general terms, but we'll also talk about in the context of the job and internship search. Um, so clearly it's important to take care of your body, right? We kind of talked about appetite being a stress signal, but you want to make sure you're getting those meals, all 3 meals if possible throughout the day, that are more healthy, right? So that's going to build that energy that you need, and that it could have a ripple effect, right? To being a little bit more positive. Exercise for sure. There's so many things about exercise that are going to be important. What comes to mind is the idea that people can become very preoccupied with COVID, so much going on in the economy, the news, that they lose track of, what made them successful in the first place, right? So maybe exercising is a good break from looking for jobs or internships. So just think about it in that context. And of course, it's just good for your body, right? Sleep, we kind of talked about sleep, right? That's one of the number one correlates for mental health. So having good mental health, you need your sleep. And I recognize that being a college student, it's tough to balance all of those things: social life, sleep, classwork, but it's so important, especially when building resiliency. Um, and I know we already talked about this, but avoiding excessive alcohol use and drugs, again, that can look like a temporary fix, um, but being careful with what that looks like with frequency and amount, that's where maybe seeking professional help can be a good idea. And then taking care of your mental health, right? Identify a support system. So we'll talk about resources at the end again, but this can be so important right now, especially during COVID, where everything is so isolating and it's really easy to just be alone and kind of, lose track of that connection with others. So the value in noticing other people are going through the same thing, and really connecting with family and friends. This is going to set a foundation for you to kind of lean on, and build that resiliency, especially during such an uncharacteristic time. Manage your time, right? So being sort of like a creature of habit is going to be important, because that's going to help you gain that sense of control, that may otherwise feel like you don't have, specifically with what's going on in the world, in general terms. And then notice these positive moments, right? So say you made a connection with someone in a certain business or industry or job setting that you're looking into, or maybe you applied to a certain amount of jobs or internships each day. Be proud of that. And then the last part, kind of mentioned this, but seek out professional help. So if that's needed, clearly there are resources at UT and outside of UT, but that's really important. All right. And then kind of moving a little bit more towards the idea within the job and internship context. So manage your expectations, right? So I know that's been a challenge for a lot of students. The idea that, there was a job or an internship that I had or that I want, and it was going to launch me into my career. Maybe that is or is not an option. So being sort of grounded in that realistic mindset of, okay, maybe I'm not going to get that ideal career, job or internship that I wanted, but have certain goals where you're thinking, I want to get something similar. I want to work on a certain skill set. So applying to jobs or internships that are maybe adjacent, and managing those expectations is going to be really important. And then the next thing, focus on what you can control, right? So we kind of talked about being a creature of habit. So the idea of, connecting with others and really maybe setting mini goals, like by applying to a certain amount of jobs or internships each day, reaching out to people a certain amount each day. These are things that you can control. Obviously, there are external things that are happening in the world that are not in your control. So really focusing on what you can control can kind of help with that resiliency factor. And then I know we've talked about this a lot, but reframing opportunities. So this goes back to that growth mindset where, these challenges that we're all kind of experiencing, these are opportunities to sort of overcome and see how you respond to those, right? And then maintaining focus and optimism, that's what resiliency is going to help with, right? So the idea that managing stress can be kind of rattling for a lot of people, understandably, in this time period. So resiliency is really going to help maintain that focus and optimism that will make you more successful, right? All right, so let's dive into a couple scenarios that we're kind of seeing a lot of through employers, through students, news. First one's a pretty common one. I had an internship or job which was rescinded due to COVID. So understandably, jobs are laying off, opportunities are being lost. Travel isn't an option for a lot of places. So this is a common one we're kind of seeing by a lot of students. Again, going back to the idea of reframing of this time period as opportunity, right? So the idea that, yes, perhaps the internship or job was lost, but what you can do in the meantime is you can look for certifications online. You can pivot to other industries or job settings that you were kind of curious about or just wanting to explore. And you may be surprised by what you like or dislike about them that can help clarify your interests moving forward. And of course, definitely come see a career counselor if that's something that you need to explore, because oftentimes this is a conversation we have one-on-one in which we look at values, interests, personality, and skills. They can help sort of redefine what it is you may be looking for during this time of COVID, where opportunities are kind of changing. As far as the next one goes, I have X major or degree, but what are my job options? So this is something we actually see all the time, even outside of the time period of COVID. But during the time period of COVID, there's more weight to it, right? So the first thing we kind of talk about is the idea that your major or your career is not defined by your major, right? So the idea that you have a certain major, there's no linear path to a certain job. So what we kind of talk about with students is the idea of those transferable skills. What experiences have you had? What is your intent behind getting a job or an internship? What are you hoping to gain? So thinking about that in the context of career counseling, obviously this is kind of just scratching the surface, but definitely come see a career counselor to kind of further explore that and tailor that to an individual, right? And then the next one, should I attend grad school or find an internship or job? So this is a pretty common one right now too. And, understanding that right now it's very stressful, you're thinking, I may not be that marketable. I might as well just go to grad school. So kind of returning to the previous question, really it's kind of what is your intent behind grad school? What is your goal? What are you wanting to do? It's a big decision to go to grad school. I know a lot of students are thinking, just there's no options. I'll just go right into grad school. It seems like the safe option. But kind of really exploring why you want to go is important. And recognizing, is this just sort of like a response? Thinking about being stressed out, I'm just going to go straight into grad school. May not always be the best option. Maybe it is the good option. So again, kind of meeting with a career counselor is going to be important, because exploring that individually, based on what your interests are, what your goals are, what are you hoping to gain out of that experience, is important, right? So the fourth one, I'm concerned about getting a hands-on and more collaborative experience. Yeah, so obviously that's going to be a tough one during COVID, because getting a hands-on experience is less likely to be an option. But again, earlier kind of talked about what you can do alternatively, which is you can network with people that perhaps have that hands-on experience. Even if it is secondhand information, it's still something that's of value, right, moving forward. So networking, doing information interviews, talking to people in fields or industries that you're interested in. And then, the more collaborative experience, it can still happen virtually. Obviously, it looks a little different, but there are still ways to do that. Obviously, Zoom is the way right now, but being more collaborative, working on teams is still going to be an option in internships and jobs. The last one, I'm nervous about interviewing virtually. So whether it's virtual or not, this is a pretty common one. And really what it comes down to is sort of practicing and getting familiar with interviews. That can be very stressful for a lot of people, and sort of building that skill set. And what that can look like is meeting with a career counselor and practicing with them. So really kind of reframing a lot of these scenarios into opportunities is what kind of resiliency is all about. And being positive about it and optimistic is the best approach. All right, so I know I'm moving kind of fast, but as far as resources go, so I wanted to mention a couple. So as far as ones at UT, there's care staff. Those are the lovely people on the left side. For those of you that don't know, that stands for counselors in academic residency. And they are licensed social workers and counselors that are housed in every school within UT. So they're readily available. It's kind of built into your tuition, and they have a set amount of sessions that they can see you. And that can be from managing stress to perfectionism to anxiety, a wide range of things that they can see you for. Alternatively, CMHC, so the Counseling and Mental Health Center, they have individual therapy as well. They have discussion groups and workshops. I definitely recommend, seeking out their services if you're in a place where you're thinking, I'm really stressed out, I need more. I need more support. We've talked about how important support is, having that support system to kind of lean on to build that resiliency, and to know that there are groups that we offer and that CMHC offers that showcases that you're not alone. This level of stress that a lot of people are experiencing is quite common, and at least noticing that people are experiencing the same thing can be very disarming to the situation. But you can also build approaches to sort of approach these and to build that resiliency that we kind of talked about. And then these are external resources sort of outside of UT. So I mentioned LinkedIn a bit earlier. So a lot of you probably know it as a social media platform for professionals. So how to get connected and network with professionals. So highly recommend this. So again, the idea that reframing this time as thinking, maybe I don't have a job or an internship lined up. It's going to be tough to find one, or maybe you do find one. A lot of people can find one through networking on LinkedIn. It's a good way to do information interviews, to find out about different careers and different industries. But right here, I wanted to showcase LinkedIn Learning. So these are courses that are taught by industry experts around software, business skills, and in the creative arts as well. And maybe this is something that you can seek out during a time in which it may be a challenge to get an internship or a job, or maybe it's just something to supplement with, and something you can kind of put on a resume, or something you can talk about with an employer when you're applying for a job in an interview. And the last two, again, these are outside of UT, but these are more based on mindfulness and meditation. So this can be a component to add or to supplement with looking at how to build resiliency, because a lot of people are so future oriented, right? It's really tough to stay in the present. So right now, exercising mindfulness and being present is very grounding for some, and it can challenge that idea of being really so future oriented and really preoccupied with the what ifs, or what's going to happen in the future. And again, those are apps that you can just get on your phone as an alternative to resources such as CMHC. Not a replacement, but maybe a supplement or something if you're not wanting something in person. All right, and then the last two things before we get to Q&A, if we do have that, I wanted to talk about upcoming events. So there are virtual office hours with employers. So we had one this week with Informatica. We've got two more coming up. One's with Charles Schwab and the other is with the city of Austin. And you can apply for these, register for these on Handshake. So definitely look out for those on Handshake if you're kind of looking for that virtual employer panel. So there's that. And the last thing I kind of wanted to plug was Texas Career Engagement. We're putting on 2 drop-in groups on that left-hand side. So the first one is basically a way more in-depth extension of this webinar. So it's looking at developing resiliency in these challenging times in the context of job and internship searching. So understandably, this is sort of starting that conversation. So definitely attend that. That's with Dr. Villarreal. That starts next Tuesday from 12 to 1, and that's throughout the summer. And then there's another drop-in group, and that kind of looks at mindfulness and how that can be incorporated with career major exploration, how that can benefit you. And then, of course, we've got drop-in career conversations every Wednesday all summer from 1 to 3. And those are roughly around 15 minutes. And so if you have a quick question or anything like that, that's the perfect place, or just need to discuss anything career or internship or major related, that's the place to come. You can also visit your own college or school's career center, but just know that we're available, and that's via Handshake. But yeah. All right, so let's kind of pivot to if there's any questions. Now is the time. All right, so we do have a question. So question is, what is a reasonable pay or wage to ask for or expect with internships? So that's a pretty tough question to answer. It really depends on sort of the job industry or the business, or the job setting, I should say. It's really kind of what would be best to do is sort of compare yourself or compare that internship to others within that state. So maybe it would look like doing some research on looking at similar internships within that state that you're applying to. And then also considering what is your background, noticing your own worth, what kind of skills you have to offer. So that's kind of like the best approach, but it's kind of hard to say, generally speaking, if you're applying to a certain internship, you should ask for this set amount of money. But really the best practice would be the idea of kind of looking at within that state, what is it that other people are kind of making in a similar position. Give a little more time to questions. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I want to say thank you for everyone attending. Definitely seek out these services that I kind of mentioned. Feel free to come visit us at Texas Career Engagement, looking at appointments on Handshake. We've got some good programming coming up, so definitely encourage kind of visiting those in the next coming weeks. But just know that we're available. Again, scheduled via Handshake, and hope everyone has a good rest of their day.